Hello Year 3, it's Mrs Msuku here with another Enquiry lesson. We're on to lesson 17 now, and today our WALT is we are learning to use historical sources to research the past. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can get started. And today we will be investigating the census. Okay, so if you don't know what a census is, that's okay. We're going to be learning all about it today. And you're going to need to be historians, so that's our state of being. So you might want to put on your historian cap, your magnifying glass, because we are going to be doing some investigating and some researching. So, what is a census? We'll use that as our word aware. I'll say it, then you'll say it. Census. Good. So the census is a count of all the people in the United Kingdom on one day, and it's taken every 10 years. So every 10 years, they count all of the people that are in the country on a certain day, and then they use that information. So the first government census in Britain was taken in 1801. So that was 220 years ago. So that's a really long time when they first started doing these counts. And there has been a census every 10 years, apart from in 1941, due to the Second World War. So every 10 years they've been counting the people in the country. Apart from that one time in 1941. But when it first started, between 1801 and 1831, the census contained only general information about the numbers of people. But then in 1841, the census was first used to list the names of every individual in a household. Okay, so now they first started it, they were just counting the people, but then they thought, oh, we want a bit more information about these people. If we're doing this count, we might as well get a bit more useful information. So then they started doing it where they listed the names of everyone who was living in the house as well. Okay, but let's think about what a household is. So a household is the people who live together in one house. So think about your household. Who lives in your household? Pause the video and see if you can say aloud all the people that live in your household. Okay, so what does the census look like? So each household fills out the record, fills out a form. I haven't written form on there, but each household fills out a form which records the age of each person, the relationship within the family, so it might be the wife or the son or the daughter. It records the occupation, so what their job is, and where they were born. And because everybody in the country is asked the same questions every time there's a census, they can use that information to compare different areas of the country or the city at the same time. Or it can compare the same area over a period of time and see how it's changing. So if we were looking at the census of Easton and in Bristol, we'd be able to see what it looked like 10 years ago, and 10 years before that, and 10 years before that, and 10 years before that. And then you can be able to see, oh, it's changed and how it's changed. Okay, so what is it and why do we need it? So a census is important for people who make decisions about the country. The government and the local authorities use the information that is gathered to help plan for new schools, hospitals, housing and transport. So they need to know the numbers of people that are living in the cities or in the towns or in the countryside so that they know, oh, we need an extra hospital there, or I think we might need an extra school there because there are lots of children being born in that part of town. And because it's done every 10 years, they can keep up to date with the information and the trends of what it's like where different people live. But also the census can be a really valuable source. We know about sources for history, for helping us to find out about the past too. So, what does it look like? Well, nowadays, the completed census information is recorded on a computer, but it used to be recorded by hand and it used to be written by hand. And all of the records used to be kept written by hand because they didn't have computers. And the information that is collected is kept confidential. So the details that are recorded on the form are not shared with the public anymore. They're kept for use by the government, but old archive records are available for us to look at so we can find out about individual people in the past and who lived in these different households. So we are going to look at a census from Westminster in London in 1851, which was 170 years ago. And if you collected your learning pack from school, you'll have a copy of this in your learning pack, so you can pause the video and go and get it now if you don't already have it. If you haven't got a learning pack, that's okay. I'm going to share it on the screen too. Right, so here we go. This is part of a census from 1851. And the thing that I'm finding a bit tricky when I look at it is the handwriting. It's very flicky and it's a little bit hard to read. And if you've got a printout of it as well, yours might be in black and white too, and it might be really, really difficult to read. But if we look really carefully, we can see some of the information. So if you want to pause the video here and have a good look at this page, you can do that now. Okay. So we can see that it says the name of the street, place or road and name of the number of the house. So we can see that it's 20 Brewer Street. And then it gives the name and the surname of each person who lives in the house on the night of the 30th of March, 1851. So remember, it's just a snapshot of who's living and who they're counting all the people on a particular day. So this was on the 30th of March, 1851. And then we've got a list of all the different people that were living there in that house. You can see what the relationship is to the head of the family. Then you can see their ages, although it is pretty hard to read. Then you can see what their rank is, or their profession, or their occupation, what their job is, and where that person was born. Okay, I'm going to move the slide on because here is exactly the same information that's taken from 1851, but somebody's just typed it up so that it's a little bit easier to read. And in your work pack as well, you have that information so that you can see it really clearly too. So if you want to pause the video here, you can have a little look. Okay, just want to check something. Right then. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this place. So we know that it's 20 Brewer Street, and that's in London. So if we're looking at the map, you can find Bristol on the map. Bristol. And the place that we're looking at is Brewer Street, which is there. And underneath, I've just zoomed in a little bit. So if we were zooming right into that map, we would get here where you can see lots of different streets. And this is the building, 20 Brewer Street. So we can see here, this is 18. This one is number 22, Brewer Street. So this building, you can see from this angle as well, is the building that we're looking at and what it was like 170 years ago. Who lived in that building all those years ago. So let's see. Like I've said already, it is a bit tricky to read this, but it is a very good source. So we've taken the information and we've got it in a typed up version, which you might want to use while you're doing your research today. So what I've done is I've just boxed up the different families that are all living in this house. So you can see number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. So there's 5 different smaller families that are living in that building. And this first one, they're all living in 20 Brewer Street. The first one, the head of the family, is Thomas Greenwood, and he's married. His wife is Anna, and it says Anna Ditto. Ditto just means the same as the above, so her name's Anna Greenwood. Okay, so that's his wife, and they're married, and we can see their ages. We can see that Thomas is 65, and we can see that Anna is 48. And then we can see that their job, so Thomas is a stonemason, and Anna was a laundress. So that means that she worked in a laundrette, or she was washing clothes for people. That was her job. And then you can see where they were born. So Thomas Greenwood was born in Hereford, and Anna Greenwood was born in Cheltenham in Gloucestershire. So they weren't actually born in London. So we know a little bit about them already, that they lived in London at the time of the census, but they weren't born there. Next, we're moving on to our next family. So you can see we've got number 2 here, and the first person named is Mary Froud, and she's a widow, so that means that her husband has died, and she's 51, and she's in charge of the lodging house. So the part of the house where she is living, she's got some people that are lodging there. So that means like they're staying, they're renting some rooms. And so that's her job, is making sure that they're renting the rooms properly. And she was born in Cornwall, and she lives there with her son, who's 14, John, and he's an errand boy, so he does lots of little jobs and bits and bobs all around the city. I expect he sometimes delivers news, or he passes messages on to people, because we didn't have phones in those days. And he was born in London. And then we've got 2 lodgers. So they're related to Mary Froud because they are her lodgers. They're staying in rooms that she is in charge of. William Bailey and Henry Ayling. So William is 38, Henry is 25, and they're both labourers. So that means they both do building work, or they help people out doing some labouring jobs, doing some tough, heavy lifting and heavy jobs. And they were both born in Surrey, in Guildford in Surrey. Okay, so now we've got 2 of our house, 2 different families that are living there. We're moving on to our 3rd family. So we've got the head of the family, which is Edward Young, and he's 29, and he's married to his wife Elizabeth Ann Young, who is also 29. And you can see their jobs. He was a carpenter, born in Clapham in Surrey, and she was a straw bonnet maker, so she made hats, and she was born in Gosport. And they have got 2 children. They've got a son and a daughter. Can you see what their son and daughter's names are? So Edward and Elizabeth's son and daughter are called Edward and Harriet. So we've got 2 Edwards. Edward has named his son Edward. And you can find out all the extra information about how old they are and where they were born. We'll move down to the next family. Martha, she's married, but her husband doesn't look like he's living there. Not on that particular date, maybe he is away. And she's 41, and her job is, she's a shopkeeper for a shop that looks like it's called Chandler's. And we can see where she was born, in Lambeth in Surrey. and she's got a son and a daughter. We've got the age of the son. He was a scholar, that means he went to school, but we haven't got much information about the daughter. We don't know how old she was, and we don't know if she went to school. It doesn't say that she went to school. And where it says ditto, that just means that she was also born in Middlesex, in Pimlico. And now we're on to our fifth one of the census, our fifth family living in that house that we looked at. And the head of the family is John Barber, and he is married to his wife Mary Ann Barber, and he's 41. And his job's a bricklayer, and he came from Framlington in Suffolk, and his wife, who's 32, her job is bricklayer's wife. So she had a full title that was her job, was a bricklayer's wife. That was what she did. Being a wife was a job enough for her. And she was born in Stowmarket, Suffolk. And now we're on to their son and daughter. Can you see how old their son is? Frederick. How old was he on this date? Yes, he was 10, and he was a scholar too. And he was born in St. John's in Westminster. And finally, his sister was 2 months old at the time of the census, and we can see that she was born in Pimlico, Middlesex. So we can find out loads and loads of information from the census, and I want you to have a little look. You can either look at the census yourself or rewind the video and have a listen to me explaining it to try and answer these questions. Okay? Once you've answered them, I would like you to see if you can come up with your own questions using the information from the census. So I've come up with a few, but you might want to come up with some questions about different people that you have seen on that census, or you might want to ask how old was a certain person, or what was a certain person's job, or how many sisters and brothers did somebody have, or how many children did someone have. You can come up with your own questions from the census. Okay, so you can pause the video here and do it that, or you can carry on watching and do your work afterwards. And I want you to think, do you think a census is a primary or a secondary source? So in your last lesson, we were looking at primary sources and secondary sources. So a primary source is an original first-hand account or an object or from an event or a topic or historical time period. The first-hand thing. Do you think it's a first-hand thing, or do you think it's a secondary resource, like an account that interprets primary sources? You can see that it's here. Census data comes under primary sources. Yes, it is a primary source because it's the official process of methodically collecting information about a certain topic in a specific time period, meaning that it's a first-hand account of a topic. Okay, so it's a first-hand record. That those pictures that we saw, the handwritten one, that was a picture of what it was actually there. But me explaining it to you in this video would be classed as a secondary source because you're learning about it from me. Okay, but if we were looking at the actual census, that would be a primary source. And before you go, I would like to tell you about something that's quite exciting coming up. So the last census that took place in this country was in 2011. And we know that a census happens every 10 years. So can you think when the next census will be? In 2021, so that's this year. So in March there will be a census, and your families will be asked to fill in forms about who lives in their household. But don't worry, the information that is collected isn't shared for everybody to see, it's just for the government to use. Okay, but it's quite exciting that we've got a census coming up in the next couple of months and you know all about it. So brilliant work, Year 3. Don't forget to send a photo of today's work to Mr. Matthews or to me, along with your maths and English. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.